Thank you, ladies, for all being here. And I'm so pleased that you will share your experience being Asian and what you're going through right now with such craziness. And I'm so proud of you being 16 and 17 years old and being able to share this. So let's share with our audience kind of what you're going through right now with Stop Asian Hate. Um, how are you experiencing this, or what are you seeing? How are you feeling? Brooke, let's go ahead and start with you.
Hi, my name's Brooke. I am Korean and Black. I'm a junior high school, so I'm 16. My family's been in this country for as long as we can remember. For me, there's a lot of fear that runs through me with all of these. Like every other day, there's something in the news, and it's so heartbreaking um, to see people who look like me and look like my parents go through this and be harmed and killed, and it's the thought that's like, could my mom be next, could my dad be next, is very, very frightening. So that's definitely the main emotion that's going through me.
I'm Madison. I am Laotian and Germanic European. I am a second generation Laotian, so that's pretty cool. I think with everything going on right now, it definitely makes me fear for people like my grandparents and, my dad, my aunts and uncles, just because I mean, like, of course, I worry for myself too, but it's like, I know if my grandpa were to get, attacked or assaulted, I don't think that's something he could survive. And so, like, things like that, it makes me really worry. But also, like, with everything going on right now, it definitely is something where I've been experiencing racism my whole entire life. And I feel like we're finally getting the recognition, that we've deserved for things like this happening. And I think this is something, maybe we should even go into things like crimes that have happened with this, like previously, and more like history that's happened in America, because yes, it is happening now, but it's always been something that's happening. And it definitely has been worse. And that is really scary, but this isn't like a new thing. It's something that's been happening for a long time. So.
Well, hello, my name is Belle. I'm a sophomore and I'm fully Chinese and I'm second generation. But as
Did you say seventh?
Second.
Oh, I was like, seventh. Are you what? Okay.
But as Madison was saying, like this has been happening forever. But because of all these hate crimes, like something that good that's come out of it is raising awareness. And like I think that we've been able to come together, like the Asian community, on shared experiences and our shared traumas. And you feel proud when you get to unite with like people who are like you and who you relate to a lot. And also kind of what both Brooke and Madison were saying is like, you are always scared because right after the attacks in Atlanta, I see on the news elderly in New York, they're wearing like sunglasses, they're wearing hats, anything to disguise themselves from not being Asian. And you kind of start to think like, is this something I'm going to have to start doing in my community? Is it stuff that my Asian friends are going to do? Is it something my parents are going to have to do? So it's definitely scary, but it's good to see some awareness being brought to it.
Hi, I'm Sanvi. I'm a freshman and I am fully Indian. And honestly, after the attacks and everything, I kind of feel awkward in my Asianness, I guess, because it feels like people are acknowledging it for the first time, and in a positive way. But I see people, for example, today asking me like thought-provoking questions about my race, and then the next class period they turn around and they do something that's like minorly racist, like a microaggression. And it feels weird to see people do that. And just because our issues haven't been made aware of for so long, I still feel like I have to remain like silent and polite and not call people out. I feel like we haven't gotten to a place where I feel like it's okay for me to do that.
Hi, my name is Maria and I am fully Indian and I'm also second generation. And I think that I definitely agree with what everyone said, but to kind of go off of what Belle was saying, I think that something good that's at least come out of this was I feel a little bit more empowered and just like proud of my culture, because I think that even if I look back like a year from now, I wouldn't have noticed some of the things like me just being like conscious or like that. I feel like everyone has that like innate subconscious or like to kind of fit in or be more like the people around them when you're living in a community that's predominantly white. And I think with everything that's going around, I had a little bit more time to kind of reflect. And obviously, I'm very angry with what's happening, but I also do feel more like proud and empowered that people are voicing out their opinions and, you know, starting to at least think about stuff and taking action on these problems.
I do love that you were also hopeful. I'm inspired. I'm like, great. However, I'm taking a lot more information with news, so I know a lot more stuff going on, which sucks. But I love that you're enthusiastic, and by using your voice, that's the only way we can get out of this. I'm curious for Maria and Sanvi, who are Indian, how you feel about Stop Asian Hate, because you're probably not going to be confused for a Chinese person. But I mean, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
So it's definitely like, I think it's really wonderful that our issues are being, brought to light. But something that I've always felt awkward about is how people like don't count us as Asian, and we're not like, they're trying to deny our experiences. So I still feel like we have a ways to go, but I kind of felt guilty for having like a sense of relief that it wasn't anyone that looked like me. And I feel like internalized racism, like something I talked about last week, made me think that. And I still have to consciously stop those gut reactions of thinking things like that. But I'm really glad that people are starting to talk more about it. And I really wish that we would be included more.
Yeah, like going off of what Sanvi was saying, I think that definitely like when you're seeing stuff on the news and like on the media, sometimes like you see like a bunch of surveys or anything, and it's like Indians aren't really included, or they're kind of just like grouped into one big category, or sometimes like completely disregarded as like other in the survey. And I think that that makes me feel upset, and I feel like I've been noticing that a lot more. Like usually before I probably wouldn't have noticed it, or it's just like so like I'm like so used to it, or it's so engraved in my mind. But I feel like it's definitely disappointing seeing that sometimes our experiences aren't considered as worthy, I guess, but I'm glad that people are starting to recognize it a lot more.
Yeah. Quick question here. How many of you, when you were growing up, either now or were growing up, wish that you were white? Raise your hand. Yep. I think that would be shocking to most people to hear that. And that is a month ago, that would be shocking to me. It is still a little surprising, but I understand. I'm learning about the whole self-hatred and how to distance, because, we're teased so much. Let's talk about that. Belle, why don't you share with us, growing up and why you felt bad and why you wanted to drop the Asian part. What was your experience?
I think a big part of it had to be like going to school and being like bullied at school for being Asian, because once you face that every day, like you get so sick of it and you're just like, how can I make this stop? And when you're being bullied for being Asian, like the only thing that makes sense to do is to try to seem white like the other kids, so you aren't the target of bullying anymore. And that's what I did try. I tried that for many, many years, just trying to make myself seem as white as possible, not taking part in my culture, like hiding that Asian side of me as much as I could. And that led to a lot of self-hatred. It led to what's called internalized racism. And that's also the same thing that stops me from speaking out about when I did experience racism, because I knew it felt bad and I knew all that stuff was wrong, but I felt that, like, Belle, you're trying so hard to seem white here. So if you speak out about the racism that you're facing, it's just going to bring attention to the fact that you aren't white. And that is what stops me from speaking up about racism during a lot of times where I should have. And so when I kind of overcame that or internalized racism during the pandemic, the same people who would say racist things, like racist jokes to me every day, once I told them, hey, like, you should not be saying this stuff to me, like, it's so dangerous, these racist jokes, like, they build up to very big things. And they were surprised. They were like, I never knew you cared about this, because they've said that stuff to me like every day for so many years. And it took me like finally being able to be comfortable myself to stand up to them. And I think that was eye-opening for me as well, just seeing that a lot of the white people at my school, they didn't even realize that I was affected by racism because I just never spoke up about it.
I am so excited. That is so great. And it's a good place to be, Belle, right? We're still talking. You and I are still talking. So great place to be. Can you give us some examples of when you're being bullied? Give us like a couple examples of what that looks like when you're in whatever elementary or whatever.
One experience I had was in 8th grade, and I was ready to go to the bus. All the kids were waiting outside, and I had this one guy talking to me. I wasn't super close to him, but it was just small talk. And then one of his friends, who I like kind of knew of, he came up to us and he was like, to his friend, he was like, why are you talking to her? Like, she's Asian. Like, I mean, just look at her. And then they just both walked away, and I just kind of stood there, like, kind of just in shock. And that just like, it just like, I was like not even acknowledged as a person just because I was Asian. He was like, no, you shouldn't talk to her because she's Asian. Like, that just made me just not feel like I was valued at all.
Well, I'm so thrilled that you are talking now. We need you. And I think just like when you were on this Brave Spaces panel, last time other people spoke up. And so that's the way it works. I'm thrilled. Madison, go ahead and share.
For me, a lot of it was definitely just the little things every day, the little acts of racism, people telling me like, this has been definitely like a big thing I'm going to mention. I've always been told I should be super smart for being Asian. And I mean, I consider myself a smart person. So while I would have taken it as a compliment, like I feel like I've taken it as a compliment my whole entire life, like looking back on it, looking back at what people have told me, it's just, I'm like, that is not a compliment to assume my intelligence off of my race. It's the same thing where you'll have, a lot of other people who aren't our race be told, oh, you're not smart, or like a lot of other minorities. And it also puts a lot of pressure on us. But another thing that was really bad for me was the sexualization of being an Asian, actually. Freshman year, it was awful. A group of boys actually gave me a nickname called Rice Cakes, and they said it was my stripper name. Because they said I was a stripper and I'm Asian. So, rice. So rice cakes. And it was tough. And, just looking back on when it happened, I took it as a joke. I thought it was funny, and I feel like that is how we dealt a lot with it when we were younger. I feel like that is a universal reaction that a lot of us had. And it's just sad that, I like went through that. Looking back, like that was really something that should not have happened. Even now I still feel like I'm like, oh, will a guy like me for, and not over sexualize me ever? And, that was definitely really hard because growing up, it was bad, but freshman year was definitely the worst for me.
Madison, with that, how did that change the way you acted or dressed, or do you know how you maneuvered after having this nickname?
I think the way I reacted was, if I could go back, I would have changed it, but it made me feel at the time, it made me feel more loved, not even love, but I was like, oh, guys like me because they think I'm hot. But they didn't actually think I was more attractive or better than other people. They just saw me for my race and, over sexualized me. And, I took it, as, oh, they like me. So I would talk to more guys. And, I had a phase where guys would only like me for my body, and I was okay with that. And it's definitely not something I promote now, but it really took like a 14-year-old should not be thinking that way. They should not be thinking about their body like that. They should not let boys over sexualize it. And I think that was really, like, looking back on the mindset I had, like, it's just not okay.
Yes. And Belle, thank you. Thank you, Madison. Go ahead, Belle.
I just wanted to add something because I've had like very, very similar experiences with Madison. Like a lot of guys had told me, oh, like I actually have things for Asians. And at first, like if this was a year ago, like I used to take that as a compliment because for so long, guys are like, I only like white girls, like I don't like Asians. So then when you had a guy who said stuff like that, it was like, oh, like guys are actually okay with like being with girls of my race. But now, like fast forward like present times after the Atlanta attacks, I see like how dangerous that stuff is. Like fetishization, like it's no way a compliment because it really can be life or death sometimes for people who look like me.
Yeah. Sanvi?
Honestly, with the whole guys thing, for me, it's always been like I, I love, I guess. I wanted a boyfriend since I was like really young, but it was the only difference between me and the girls that guys liked was race. I was loud. They were loud. They were funny. I was funny, at least I think so. Um, like that. And it always made me feel like, okay, maybe I need to act more like white people so guys will like me. And I tried really hard to do that. I started cursing and I wore like short crop tops and short shorts. And I tried to make myself as likable as possible. And it didn't work. But honestly, racism that I faced is mostly, it's just so casual. It's just like substitute teachers trying to say your name, butchering it, and then not even asking you how to say it and just moving on to the next person. It's people just like coming up to you and being like, do my homework, please. They're just turning you into this one thing and defining you by this one thing. And that can be so hurtful.
Yeah, I actually wanted to go back to something that Madison said about like the stereotyping, and Sambi also touched on this. Actually in psychology class, actually not too far long ago, we were talking about stereotypes, and I was really excited about this unit because like it would give me a chance to like maybe get a more scientific approach of like what they are and why we use them. But they, in the studies we had looked at, they separated stereotypes into stereotype threats and stereotype promises. Stereotype threats were like Black people are inarticulate. Stereotype promise, which is supposed to be a good thing, was Asian people are smart. And I thought that was really upsetting that they put that as like a good thing, because while yes, I pride myself in being an intelligent person, it's very dangerous to me that it's framed as something good because of the impact that it has. Like Sami was saying, people talk to me all the time like, oh, you're so smart, you're Asian, of course you got 100, you're Asian. And it's no, like I work hard and I work just as hard as everybody else. And it like invalidates the effort, the time, the energy that I put into the things that I do. And that really upset me. So I remember throughout middle school, I would pretend I was so dumb. I would pretend to be this, flighty, just like I don't, my biggest point of reference was I forget her name right now, but the white girl from Princess and the Frog, the nice one, but she's very bubbly, but just not very intelligent. And I would try to portray myself as this just in so people would stop asking me for answers because I'm Asian, because I'm smart. And so that's why, I mean, I think the Asians are so smart. That's a stereotype threat, in my opinion, because it's like, it makes me feel bad about my own accomplishments and people belittling me because, oh, you're only smart because you're Asian. You know, like we're all smart because we work hard. So I think that was definitely something that, one of the reasons why I wanted to be white. It's the same thing with everybody else. I wanted to look the same as all of my other peers. Like, I live in white middle-class suburbia. Every house looks the same. Families are very similar except for us. And it's very stark, the contrast between me, my neighbors, me and my classmates. And so trying to be as aesthetically the same, and because I don't participate in Korean culture, as my mom was adopted, I don't have to deal with the clothing discrimination. I don't have to deal with the food discrimination or the name discrimination. It's all aesthetic. And, you know, like, I have the perfect skin tone that everyone wants to be pulling my arm and saying, look, I'm tanner than you and I'm white and you're black. Haha. Like, it, again, invalid. Like, you want to look like me, but you will never, ever have to experience the things that I experience. And thus, again, invalidating my personal experiences and the pain that I've felt. So I think those are the two biggest reasons why I wanted to be white, or at least not a person of color.
Going back to what Brooke said about stereotypes, honestly, you can try so hard not to fit into a stereotype, but there genuinely is one for everything. You're Asian and you like dance. There's a stereotype for that. You're Asian and you're wealthier than most people. There's a stereotype for that. It's just like, you can feel so trapped sometimes when you feel like it's not okay to fit into those stereotypes, because, you know, you want to be different. You don't want to face the same things that other people do. But people need to realize that it's okay to fit into those stereotypes. It's not your fault. It's the people who are putting you into those boxes and defining you by that one thing, and it's their fault.
By the way, yeah, Maria, you are all so smart. I'm just like, yes, I can't wait for you to all be older and get out there and like change the world. So thank you for that. I'm so inspired. Go ahead, Maria.
I think that stereotypes, like going back to what you all touched on, is very huge, especially in elementary school. That was really big for me because in third grade, especially, I remember kids would always say that I was so smart. But again, to what Brooke said, like invalidating the hard work that I put in, because no one's born with intelligence, you know, like everyone has to work for it. And kids would like talk to me like just so they could compare their grades with mine. And I would feel like a little bit more included because at least they were approaching me and starting a conversation. So I would go along with it, thinking that they wanted to talk with me, but really it's only to compare grades or assignments or anything like that. So I think that had a big impact also on like how I would participate in class, because I feel like I always felt a need to be right in like what I said. So like in parent teacher conferences, my parents would always get the same message from all of my teachers saying I don't participate in class. And I think that it's because I had this idea in my brain that I need to only respond to a question if I knew for sure that I need the answer. So I'd only respond for certain times, and I wouldn't ask questions. Like I would always Google the question and make sure like I looked it up before and then ask them in private. Like don't ask questions like in front of the whole class because it makes you appear stupid. So I feel like those stereotypes just played a big part in how I participate in class or just in conversations.
One thing that Sonvi mentioned was people always assume that you have a lot of money and that you're wealthy when you're Asian. And I don't know how that experience is for anybody else, but my mom is actually the one who brings in most of the money in my household, and she is white. My dad he's a first generation immigrant. He came over to California towards the end of the Vietnam War to flee, with his family. And he went through a lot when he was younger. He had a bad education. He was the only person in his entire family to go to college. And even then, he went to community college for 2 years. And, he became a nurse, and he spent his whole life now taking care of me and my sister as a stay-at-home dad. Now he works as an aide at a school. But to me, it just feels so invalidating of, a lot of Asians' experiences with immigration and, them coming over and not getting a good enough education, because a lot of them are grouped into these other minorities, in these areas where they don't get a good education. They don't have a lot of access to, things that, where I live, I do, which I'm very glad of. And, to me, when people are like, oh, Asians are always rich, I'm like, well, my dad, he grew up in a ghetto. And I know that is the same for, a lot of other people. So, yeah, it's really hard, like, looking at that, because then I'm like, no, my family has actually gone through a lot when it comes to, being wealthy and stuff like that. So.
I wanted to add with like the whole rich stereotype. I feel like, and because I've noticed for me personally a lot more like, oh, all Asians work at the nail salon. They're all poor. They all work in those like little tiny like smog Chinatowns, like stuff like that. That's really harmful. And I feel like with me, like I'm probably right smack dab middle class. And my dad's Black. My dad's the breadwinner. My mom's a preschool teacher. But I feel like the rich stereotype for me has only been employed to invalidate my experiences. So it's like, oh, you're not one of those Asians. You must not face anything. Like, I feel like that for me, at least, I don't know about any of you guys. I know it works the same way for my dad's side of the family with Black people. It's like, oh, you guys are all like middle class, even though you grew up not great, not bad, but not great, like you guys can't face racism. You're so articulate. I feel like it's the same thing with Asian people, at least with my experience, is like, oh, you're middle class, you can't face racism, you're privileged. Like it's only used, these stereotypes, the conflicting stereotypes are really only used in my life to invalidate experiences.
I've definitely like faced the same like all Asians are rich stereotype too, and it's just damaging because like people just assume that you don't care about things. Like, for example, I had kids in my grade like making fun of homeless people, and so when I stood up to them, I faced a lot of backlash for it because I think people just assumed, she's wealthy, like she's Asian, like why is she, like she's not involved in this. But they just didn't really know that I'm a daughter of immigrant parents. Like my dad didn't have a home like all the time through his childhood, so they say very ignorant stuff to you and they just don't expect you to care, which just isn't the case, because I think a lot of us do care about, because we are like part of like the lower like middle class. Like not all of us are super high class. Like we generally like do care about the well-being of other people, and I think that it just puts like a bad stereotype on us that we're very like materialistic and we're not going to work hard because we already have stuff. It's just damaging in that sense.
One thing I especially wanted to add with the whole, wealthy versus poor thing is here we are always very like stereotyped as rich because we live in a middle upper class area, but if you go to so many other places in America, if you go to California, you will see a lot of people who aren't, the rich and wealthy stereotype. Asians are actually there portrayed as very poor and, a part of a lot, of the poor minorities in those areas. So here where I'm portrayed as wealthy, there's so many other areas where either way people have some prejudice or against us. Even what Brooke said about the nail salons, people either only see us as really rich or really poor. There's, no matter what, there is some stereotype against us.
I just love observing, by the way. I mean, this is great. I'm here to observe. I was going to share one thing so I'm in Seattle and there are a lot of Asians. I think in downtown Seattle, I believe it's 14%. And we've got Amazon and Microsoft and Expedia and all the tech companies. And there are a lot of Asians over here and Chinese and Japanese, a lot of East Asians. And so the model minority winners. And so this is so important to hear because I think we don't, and I don't have, I'm in the tech space. And so I really only am around Japanese or Chinese, and having other ethnicities represented and sharing, I think it just shows, because Asians have the biggest gap, disparity between the top and the bottom of incomes. And so I'm so pleased that you are sharing that. Let's go back to school again. So let's talk about food and describe, Brooke, you talked about food discrimination. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's a great term. So give us a story on what that looked like, what's that scenario, and what was the impact?
Actually, so the only Korean food like that my mom has ever made has been beef bulgogi, and we have a wok. I eat with chopsticks occasionally. On this less like food side, but more utensils side, everyone, like when I said I could use chopsticks, like in middle school, everyone like harped on that and was like, "Oh, of course you can use chopsticks. You're Asian." And again, I was just like, what was the accusatory tone for? Like, why was that a bad thing? Like, I was proud that I could use chopsticks. Like, it's a skill that a lot of people, surprisingly, in my opinion, I think it's pretty easy to use, but a lot of people don't have, right? And it's not like, obviously it's in a utensil that like is distinctly Asian, but at the same time, like I don't think it was necessary for this group of white boys to try to insult me based on the fact that, yeah, I can use chopsticks. Like, I beat you in a chopsticks competition. I don't think you should be taking it out on me. And like, it's like one thing to be a sore loser, but another thing to take it out in a racial way. Like, you can, like, it's obviously inexcusable to be rude either way, but like, you can be rude without being racist. And I think I would have taken it a lot better if you weren't racist. And I remember I was talking in family consumer science. Conveniently, we weren't actually doing the foods section yet. We were about to transition into that in 8th grade. But I remember we were talking about like eating and drinking, and I was talking to this kid who is, I think his parents are British. I'm not sure exactly, but we were joking around in a British accent. And now like everyone does their British accent. I feel like, to me, it wasn't offensive. And if it was, then I apologized for it. But we were joking like, oh, we got another spot of tea. And then this kid was like, go back to the Silk Road, go eat with your stupid little chopsticks. And I was like, where did that come from? I feel like there's a difference between, again, insensitivity and straight up racism. Like, there's a mass, in my opinion, anyway, there's a massive line between like, don't, like, he could have said, don't do that. Like, there's so many other options beyond just jumping to chopsticks, ling ling, go back to the Silk Road, like, go paint my nails. It's just, those comments were so wildly unnecessary. And again, harping back on the stereotype thing, like, why I'm not even Chinese. Like, everyone assuming I'm Chinese as well is another thing that I wanted to like bring up, because that, like, you're not taking the time, and it shows that you don't care. Like, and I'm sure everyone here has experienced this. Like, it just seems like no one really cares. And I feel like this is great that we have a voice now with the whole Stop Asian Hate movement. It's like, we just need a voice. but yeah, I think personally, as I've never taken cultural food to lunch. So, but the chopsticks has been a big issue for me throughout my life.
I just wanted to talk about this same theme of chopsticks again because I kind of have like an opposite experience of Brooke. Like I grew up using chopsticks in an Asian household, but once I started to eat like out in public with my friends, like I would say around like middle school, I quickly stopped using them because again, I was trying so hard to seem white and I thought that using chopsticks, like being able to use them well, would just make me seem different. So I would go, like even if I could use chopsticks, I'd be like, oh, I don't even know how to use them. And like I would just act very badly with them to the point where like I just stopped eating with chopsticks completely. Like if I try to eat chopsticks with chopsticks right now, like I can barely do it. And it's really sad because like a few days ago, my mom was telling me a story about me in kindergarten and how I gave like a whole presentation to everyone in my class about Chinese culture. And I literally taught them how to use chopsticks and like pick up little marshmallows like as a game. And I taught everyone in my class because I was so proud of it. And then now like I fast forward to like me now and I like can't even use it. It's just like it made me kind of feel guilty and I just showed how real that internalized racism is.
I think a lot of it for me, and I definitely have a very interesting experience growing up in a half white, half Asian household. Like I didn't know how to use chopsticks until I was older. I mean, I would still eat a lot of Asian food. My dad cooks a lot of great Asian food, but I'd always eat it, with a fork or something. Um, but it definitely like just living in a very white community in general. I never brought Asian food to school. And it wasn't because like my dad never cooked Asian food. It was just, I feel like being in a predominantly white community in general can be whitewashing, not just for me, but, more and even in my parents, it can be. And, I occasionally would bring Asian food to school. But it was like, and of course, people would always give me weird looks. A lot of it was actually like the smell. I'd always like if I had, food in my lunchbox in my bag, I was like, and last year I'd say even I just wouldn't want to carry my backpack around because I was like, I really just don't want people to, smell this on me. Um, I think that like I definitely have not had it as bad as some people, but it can go even back to, we only have one Asian store like in this area and I next to it there's like an Indian store I know. So even then like, we don't have half the stuff we could, use to cook Asian food, even if I wanted to have it like really often. My dad does. We have Asian food in my household about like every other day, which is great. But even bringing it to lunch is definitely something my family has like not normalized. So
I definitely brought a lot of like cultural food in elementary school, but people would definitely like comment on the smell as Madison was talking about. And I, as a result, like I would always either eat as fast as I could and like just like put it back into my lunchbox or just like not eat all of it. And tell my mom if she could like ask my mom if she could just pack me like a sandwich or like just let me buy from the school. I like would beg my parents if I could just buy so then I wouldn't have to like face opening like the food in front of people and then if people would comment on it. And I would only feel okay eating it if I was in a lunch table that was only with other Indians or other Asians who would have similar food as me, and I would feel like it was okay to eat it. But otherwise, I would always try to like cover it with my lunchbox. And then sometimes like my friend would comment like, "Why are you sitting with a lunchbox like in front of you? Like I can't see you or anything." But I didn't want to like show my food just because I was always conscious about it and I wouldn't want to bring it to school.
Hang on just a second, Belle. So Maria, that is so heartbreaking. And I think I heard this from a number of people, but we should do get a lunchbox and do a little meme and actually share these stories, because I think getting the word out, having quick explanations because people like, so I think that visual is great. Maybe you know somebody who has a lunchbox. Maybe you could do up a thing and then talk about it, and then we can share it on Instagram and on stories and everything. So just an idea. All right, thanks. All right, Belle, go ahead.
I just wanted to add how like bullying of like ethnic foods at school, like it really kind of damages the way that you look at your own ethnic foods. Like for me, like I could have like an amazing like homemade dumplings packed for me at lunch, but then immediately I would beg my parents to buy like some like I don't know, a few dollar like Lunchables that's like cold and not like doesn't even taste good instead. And I would view like the Lunchables that have like no nutrition, like just don't even taste good as like a lot better than like amazing homemade food. And I feel like that even translated to like outside of school. Like if I went to a restaurant, I would literally view McDonald's because it was like American, like white food. I would view it as like so high end. But then if my parents wanted to take me out to a very nice like Asian restaurant, I would be like no, because like I just that connotation, like that negative connotation put on Asian food from schools really translated to even the outside world and restaurants.
So devastating. People need to hear this. What other kinds of teasing did you experience, and how has it impacted you up to now? Go ahead.
I think from a really young age, just because my elementary school was so white, I think I was the only Asian in my grade, and then there were probably two more in my school. And I was the only person of color in my friend group. So, for example, bindis, um, from like when I was like 7 or 8, I would ask my mom, like, stop making me wear these every day. I don't want to. People tease me about it. That's probably the most common thing that elementary school kids will tease other Indian kids about. And it just, they're so, first of all, they're so pretty. I love them. They come in so many different styles and everything. But when people tell you that that's like not okay and people think of it as weird, they kind of, as Belle said, makes you like forget about how good it is and associate this negative connotation with parts of your culture.
Sanvi, were you talking last week how were your grandparents, are they in traditional garb? Was that you who shared that? Uh, do your grandparents wear Indian traditional garb?
No, but
Who-
I wasn't talking about it, but they do. My grandparents are actually here in America right now. And, whenever they come, I used to be embarrassed to like go out shopping because, I'd wear white clothes and they'd wear saris or something like that. And I don't know, it would just make me feel uncomfortable to be associated with them. I'd like move away. And to this day, I'm trying to like get rid of it. It's a slow process because it's been ingrained in your head for so long that you like feel like you're supposed to feel these things. But yeah, I'm getting to be more comfortable with my culture.
Adding on to that, a couple years ago, my grandma visited on my dad's side, so she's Asian, and we went to this lake, and she took this like rock, this like smooth rock, and started rubbing it on like the ball of her foot and like rubbing it around her foot because she was just like, oh, like a foot massage, and oh my gosh, I was so embarrassed. I was like, please, someone, like this is so embarrassing. I was like, nobody else would do this, but looking at that, I was like, that was so pure of her to do. That is like, I wish I thought of something cool like that when I went to the lake. She was just giving herself a massage. But so definitely like internalized racism with that, and even with family members, it was a lot growing up. Now I appreciate them so much, and I love being around them and showing them off, but so that. But I also wanted to mention growing up, like, and I didn't want to say this just because I think everybody is beautiful, but I always felt so ugly. I never felt pretty enough as an Asian. I just like, I dreamt, I was like, oh, please just like make me white. I want to have that blonde hair and those big blue eyes. And it was just so hard on me. Like as a kid, I should not be caring about how I look like this much. And it was even worse because it was something like that I cannot change. It's been like a trend lately to always be like, oh, it's always the blonde girls, the blonde girls always win, and it'll be some like just white brunette girl saying it. I'm like, then dye your hair blonde, if you really want to be her, dye your hair blonde. Because guess what? I can't dye my skin white. I can't change my eye shape. I can't make myself full white. And it's like really frustrating thinking about like how I've pictured myself like throughout my whole entire childhood as not pretty enough like physically, and now I definitely do appreciate the way I look. I think I look beautiful, but it's still like will be rough, and I'll still be like, oh, I wish I looked like her, and I never will. But and especially it also has been hard with guys. Guys have always, had a preference of girls. That I was never their ideal type, but like they still go for me just because, as like a Southeast Asian American, I know it like it also annoys me because there is so much preference in Asians, like people don't realize. Like somebody will picture like somebody who is Chinese so much different from me, like as a Laotian. We have like completely different skin tones half the time, because as as a Southeast Asian, I have a darker skin tone, but my skin tone isn't as dark as like a South Asian. And then you will have, there are certain Koreans and certain like other East Asian people who have like a more fair skin tone. So it has been really hard like being, not grouped with those people as like a bad thing, but just like stereotyped all as one person. And beauty standards can really be hard when it comes to that. People will tell me, I need to look like, an East Asian person even. Like I don't look like an East Asian, I mean, some could say I do because a lot of people can't tell the difference, but well, they think they can't, but a lot of them,
What you said really struck a nerve with me. Not that what you said, but like the idea of, I know that you didn't offend me. I also had this huge thing with like, because my side profile is flat, I don't have the cutesy little nose. My nose is wider. I look very distinctly Asian. I know that people have always been like, oh, you're so exotic. Throughout 6th grade, when Moana came out, I'm not a Pacific Islander. Like I'm Korean. And not that it's a bad thing to be a Pacific Islander. It's just that's not who I am, and I'm not gonna claim that I am because that's not what I am. But people would always be like, "Are you Moana?" And now there's so many problems with asking, "Are you Moana?" Not even gonna try to fit anything in there. No ethnicity, no, just are you Moana? That was in and of itself a problem. But like, it was the whole same thing with where are you from. But going back to like the whole beauty thing, like I used to hate myself and I would never talk about boys at all, ever. I would never talk about it because I would be like, I remember distinctly, I was in my garage just hanging out with my 2 white friends. Like I was really close with them and they were bugging me about like, they were like, everyone has a crush. And I wouldn't say anything. Like I'd be like, oh, he has a nice personality, but like I would never comment on looks because I genuinely thought that because I was Asian, people wouldn't want me for my looks. And this is when I was in like 5th grade. I remember this so distinctly. And I was just like, if I was white, I would have a crush. Like I would feel comfortable speaking about it if I didn't have such a flat face, if my face wasn't so round, if my eyes weren't so, I guess, like thin. And I genuinely thought that. And I think it actually really took up until this year to like during the pandemic really to find some sort of like confidence in myself, which is, I'm glad now as I'm still in high school, like I'm glad now than when I'm later on in life, like, the next best time to plant a tree is now, because I can't go back in time and fix it. But that was really something that irks me now with looking back. Like I genuinely hated myself for being not Aryan, not, blonde hair, blue eyes. Like I wasn't like Barbie or anything like that. And I actually used to go with what people always be like, you're so exotic. And I went with it and I thought it was funny. I even like embraced it at one point. I think this was during my freshman year, just like Madison, my freshman year was the worst year, regarding racism and just all that stuff. But like, I went with it. I was like, if I couldn't be pretty, I could at least be something. Like I was exotic. And that looking back, I'm like, oh, why did I do that? But it was really, like to fit in, and I wasn't going to be white. I kind of abandoned trying to be white because I knew that was impossible for me. But, if I couldn't be pretty, if I couldn't be stupid, I was going to be exotic. And that was how I coped with my, like, any discrimination I faced. I embraced it in like the wrong sort of way.
I kind of wanted to go back to what Madison was saying. So like one specific part of my body that stands out to me is like my eyes. And so when I was like in elementary school, like kids at school would literally request me to like open up my eyes so they could see the size of my eyeballs, which is a very weird request, but I literally had to play along with it. And then fast forward to like during the pandemic, there was like a trend that came up and it was called like the fox eye trend, where every like influencers like pulling their eyes back to like replicate the same shape, taping their eyes back. And it became like a bigger thing. And it kind of struck me in the wrong way because it was like people who aren't even Asian, they're being praised for this trend, like for having an eye shape that they don't even have. But then when you have it naturally, like I did, like you would have to open up your eyes so people could see that your eyeballs were the same shape as theirs. It was just so weird to me. And then another thing was like, I was like made to hate my eye shape. Like I remember as a little girl, like to my mom, I was like, I want eye surgery, which is something that no little girl should be worrying about. But I even started like, if guys would say like genuine guys would be like, oh my gosh, I love your eyes, I would literally get mad at them. Like I would think that that was a racist comment because I was just made to feel so ashamed of my eyes that I thought they were just mocking me. And now looking back, I'm like, what if they really did like my eye shapes? Because like they're unique. Like I think they're so cool on all Asians. And it's definitely made me appreciate my eyes a lot more. But yeah, it's something that I've struggled a lot with in the past.
So you were all aware of this. What was that challenge called, or that trend?
It's called the fox eye trend.
Yeah, so pretty much it was like a trend within like beauty standards. Even right now it's still trendy to have a very lifted face, like very high lifted, it makes you look younger. So they would pull their eyes back, like you can look in pictures. So they'd pull like here, like at their temples, and they'd pull their eyes back, like to lift up their entire like eye and face. But the worst part is a lot of people would have issues with it. Like I myself, there were a lot of Asian communities that did. And even then, so many celebrities like looked over it. So many people never apologized for it. Like it was something that was definitely like looked over. Like even now, it still happens. Like people still do it. And it's still kind of like hard seeing people like being so appreciated for their beauty. Like I could have the same eye shape and same face shape as them, but they're white, so it looks good on them. But
I was on Instagram earlier today and I saw another picture with someone doing the fox eye thing. And if you scroll through the comments, they're all, oh my gosh, you're so gorgeous. Oh my gosh, you're so pretty. You look so cool. She's blonde. She's white. And then if you look at comments on like posts that are like stop Asian hate made by an Asian person, all you see is insult after insult after insult after insult. Just difference is so heartbreaking.
When have you so I heard you all of you speak last week on the panel. Had you spoken up? How many times have you spoken up and out about this? And what said, I need to do this now? If anybody's, will anybody listen? Let's do this. Go ahead, Madison.
I didn't speak at the Stop Asian Hate meeting. I don't know if that's what you're referring to, but I couldn't make it. But I did want to say, like, speaking out about things, I actually do try a lot, really hard. Like, if somebody is just sitting next to me and they'll say a comment that I'm like, that's not okay, I really try and educate them. Just the worst part is having people like not understand certain like concepts that I'm trying to explain. Like, I'll be like, oh yeah, somebody like was racist towards me and that's like not okay. And they're just like, oh my gosh, we're not having this conversation again, are we? Like, we're not gonna have this conversation about racism again. Like, we like, oh my gosh, we get it. Like, sorry, I offended you. Next time I just won't say anything. And it's like stuff like that that really hurts. And it's from like close friends, not like close friends, but like family friends, a lot. So it's not like something I could like, I can't really, drop them. But I was talking about how like it really hurt, like these comments, like these racial slurs that people have called me. And then they're like, oh, these slurs, and then they said them. And it was just so like, I was like, I like specifically said that it like hurt me. And one of the worst parts is I will have people that will try to provoke me by saying racist stuff, by saying not even like racist, but just anything that like, anything that's ableist, anything that's homophobic, like, even going into all that, if they can say anything about that and they purposely try to provoke me because they think it's funny, and I'm like, find something else to joke about, because this isn't even funny at this point. And it's just very like, I try really hard to speak up about it and it just feels like a joke half the time.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I know I've had experiences where people definitely try to provoke me. I know I have a teacher who tries to provoke me. Um, and and I like a lot of the times I feel like I have to go along with it because a lot of the things that people respond to me with is just like, oh, it's just dark humor. It's just a joke. And like trying to like how do you like say it's like talking to a brick wall. Like sometimes like I feel like I'm talking at somebody and they're not listening. And I feel like, and it's so difficult for me to speak up because obviously I'm a very opinionated person and I pride myself in my assertiveness, and my bluntness with a positive connotation behind that, if I may note. But it's so difficult for me to like speak up because again, everyone's just like, oh, it's just a joke. Like you're the crazy one here. And like putting it on me, as I'm sure you've all felt as well, it's just like, oh no, you're the one that's crazy. It's not me. It's not my problem that you're offended. And like the half-hearted apologies that I've gotten, like, I remember one time, I mean, it was the same kid that told me to go back to the Silk Road and like use chopsticks or whatever. But he gave me this whole long apology. And then I don't know why, and this was in 8th grade. And so this was before like I'd found my voice and the confidence to speak up. But I remember I felt so embarrassed that I had made a scene about it. And I feel like that kind of goes back to like the whole, like being bullied in elementary school and being targeted, and even like up until now still, it's like being bullied at such a young age, like, and not wanting to make a scene about it because nothing's done. Even if I contact like you'd think trusted adults, they don't care. Especially because everyone really, I don't think I've had one teacher of color in my entire life. And that's not really surprising to me, but like just not having anybody to go to as well is a really big hindrance. And like, what do I do with this? Like, no matter how many times I'm screaming and I'm trying, it's like, no one's really there to like give me a microphone to like actually speak up. Like, I feel like I'm screaming into a pillow with certain things. Like I raised concerns my freshman year, like one time, and it was just like, oh, well, like and this is in marching band. So it was like, let the section leader deal with it. Well, the section leader was taking part in it. So it was like, how do you navigate that? And it was a lot of the times it's just like, oh, well, it's such a big band. How do we deal with all of it? And like the pushing away their responsibility onto me, like as the person affected by it. And I feel like that's a common theme. It's just like, oh, well, you're the one who's dealing with it. We don't want to deal with it because we don't understand it. So go back to you. And I think that's one of the reasons why throughout elementary school, middle school, and even the beginning of my high school career, I did not speak up about much, just because it was so hard to find a solution.
Yeah, I definitely agree that it's super hard to speak up about your own race, because A, the internalized racism, and also B, I don't know if any of you guys relate, but when you're like the child of immigrant parents, like you're just taught from a young age, like don't speak up, don't cause a scene about it, let it pass. Like that was something that my parents always told me to say, and it was really hard because I'm like Brooke, like I have a lot of opinions. I'm able to see right from wrong, and it bothers me if I don't speak up. But then I don't, because internalized racism, and also my parents, like when you're an immigrant, it's very much like survival mode. Like you try to keep a low profile, try to make ends meet, and don't anger people. But then I think that once I like overcame that, especially at the listening session for Stop Asian Hate, like you can see it's such a hard thing to talk about. Like people were crying, I was crying. Like it definitely took a lot of courage, because after all these years, you aren't used to speaking up because you've always been told to like keep quiet about it. So yeah.
My, I guess, moment actually happened earlier this year. I read an interview with and an excerpt from Kathy Park Hong's book, Minor Feelings and Asian American Reckoning. And after I read that, I was honestly just like in shock, because, when someone tells you that you matter, and somebody tells you that you're there, you exist, no one can deny your experiences, and somebody tells you that you're beautiful for the first time, you know, you're in shock, but at the same time, it's just such a weight lifted off your chest, you know. Before, the most I would speak out about my race was like if people made fun of my mustache, I'd be like, everyone has one, you just can't see it because you're blonde and I have dark hair. And with what Brooke said about adults, I think they mean well, most of them at least, but there's no answer to end racism. There's no specific thing that you can do to like stop it concretely. And I think they're just confused, and there's also like insensitiveness, and it's like a laziness. They don't want that huge responsibility to be shouldered on them.
I think for me, the first time when I actually spoke up was the listening session, which is kind of like unfortunate and sad because it's so late. But I mean, at least it happened, one. But two, like my friends and I who were planning to speak, we were all really worried, like scared about speaking. And it wasn't because like it was like we're speaking to strangers, it's like the people that we know. So it's like it made it a lot more uncomfortable, like seeing your friends and like your teachers there also. But it was a lot, like it was like very eye-opening. We got messages like my chemistry teacher like reached out to me like after saying that it was like super eye-opening for him.
I was crying the whole time as I cry now. I'm so proud of all of you. It's just so important to get this word out here. How do you feel now that you are sharing, and how do you feel like you will be championing and speaking up, moving on, now that you're also finding other people who are now empowered?
I think a lot of it, like recently, I have been trying really hard to reach out to people. I reached out, even the district, they're trying hard to, implement a lot of, diversity and culture and equity. We have a director for it now. So I've reached out to him because I think a lot of it is trying to, bring like the stuff into our community and notice like the stuff that we go through here, because the racism that I've experienced that has most affected me has been here. Like I've always known people have had hatred towards Asians, and I can always have fear for that, that I'm gonna get hate crimes. But a lot of it too is like, because I don't face that on like a daily basis, but I do face the small bits of racism and stereotyping. So a lot of it is now, trying to fix that. And I have reached out to a lot of people. I try and post on my social media constantly, and I don't always have people agree with me, and I do have some friends I've lost over that stuff. I've definitely lost a lot of guy friends over it even. But a lot of it is trying to look past what I've lost, and I'm gonna look at what I'm gonna gain for other people and myself, within trying to bring this into our community.
I totally feel the same way. I feel like it's great to see like I am part of the group that's pushing the ball in the right direction for this. And it's really like almost like a weight off of my chest, because obviously like I've held on to this stuff, like all this stuff that's happened to me, because I've never given myself the time to like grieve or mourn for it, because it is a big deal. And obviously, telling myself isn't a big deal, but now like coming to terms with that and being able to accept it and like use that as inspiration to like keep pushing forward is really nice. I mean, this whole group is a group of leaders right here, like every one of them, and it's really nice to see that. And we've all met with the DEI director, Mr. Brown, wonderful, and now that we have someone who's gonna help direct us and lead us in the right direction, at least within the district and in our community, is so wonderful to see. Like it's so inspiring. And going back to the listening session, like all the people who weren't planning on speaking that spoke, and even the people like Madison who wanted to come but couldn't and speak. It's just so inspiring to see that the change is happening, and because I'm finally able to be proud of the way I look, especially this year, and like look at like obviously like all these attacks are happening, but like look at the progress, even switching like one person's mindset over. Like I have the same chemistry teacher as Maria, we're in the same class, and he reached out to me as well, and it's just like he wants to learn, and it's so wonderful to see like my teachers being inspired, because these are the people that are like in control of my grades, and like it's just so inspiring to see so many people who I wouldn't have a personal connection with if not for stuff like this, like the listening session, our work with Mr. Brown, and how vocal I've become this past year. It's overall, it's also wonderful to see.
Honestly, same as Madison and Brooke. I feel powerful maybe for the first time. And I feel like our first responsibility, obviously, it's so important to end racism, but I feel like first we have to tell Asian people that, we have to give them their aha moment like I had. We have to tell them that they do matter, their experiences are real. We have to put an end to the confusion they feel. We have to put an end to them hating themselves and all that internalized racism. We want to protect the next generation from looking at themselves in the mirror and wanting to be white, because that's such a horrible feeling.
Yeah, what I'm saying goes right along with Sandy. Like the younger generation of students at Downingtown, like we're here to like, we just want to protect them, like hide them from like everything that we went through. We're like, it's not worth it to hate everything about yourself to try and please white people and act like you're white. It's not worth it. It's not gonna work. Because when you're older, like there's a lot of things that I did that I regret now. And there's things that I've done that have distanced myself from my culture that I wish I haven't done. So I feel like if I was a young student and I had a group of you know, we're all like Asian girls who are like getting very comfortable with who we are in our skin. We're not ashamed to be Asian anymore. If I had someone like that to look up to, I think it would have helped me so much and just saved me so much time. So that's what I really, really am excited to do, is hopefully inspire younger students to show them like, we're proud to be Asian and here's how you can be too.
Yeah, definitely like agreeing with what you all said. And like Brooke and I were talking, we're juniors, almost seniors, and like before we leave, like we just want to do as much as we can to just help like the next I guess like generation of students who are gonna come in and hopefully not have the same experiences, because like even looking back to the listening session, one of our teachers, like one of our math teachers talk, and she had like a lot of the same experiences that a lot of the students brought up too. And I was very surprised like seeing those similarities. Like not much has changed, but hopefully with more people at least raising awareness. And I know that we're celebrating AAPI month in May. Like hopefully people will begin to also like recognize and just be proud of like who they are.
I am so inspired again. I'm just blubbering with inspiration from all of you. So as we wrap up here, I wanted to plant a few seeds and ask a couple of questions on action items. Belle, you were talking about, protect the little ones coming up. I wonder if you all could start creating programs for 7th graders or middle school and for elementary schools, and to create even an outline of what that could look like, where it's a little conversation like this to empower. Maybe it's just for Asians and maybe and their parents too, maybe, and then to kind of get that going. I talked to 2 parents in New York who put together a PTA program for Asians and their parents, to be a safe space. So just Asians to talk to each other. But yeah, mentoring, maybe big brother, big sister type thing. And I'm hoping you can reach out to colleges as well, starting with the Asian groups, KSA, Korean, Chinese, FOSS, I mean, all of them, because there are affinity groups for all of them. Because I'm trying to get in there too, because there's a lot of challenges that I'm trying to do to get our Asian voices out there. I'm going to do a thing called Asian Voices Challenge, where it's a minute video or 59 seconds. So it can be on Instagram and a story and etc. I'm hoping to get some TikTokers going to share, hey, I'm Jolene, Japanese, Chinese, Swedish. I'm terrible at chopsticks. I don't like seafood and I speak English only, and just, something about yourself. And I'm American, or I'm Asian American, or something, where we just start using our voices. So I'm imagining, if 100,000 people like all did this 1-minute video, people are starting to see, oh, these are Asians and they're so diverse and they're speaking up. And then the next week we can have another challenge, and then the next week. And so people start seeing us. And then the younger folks are seeing like, oh my gosh, look, there's people like me. And so those are a couple ideas I have. And then regarding some of your teachers or teachers and other adults that I started a Asian Allies group. And this is where I'm training and I'm sharing, all right, here are a lot of the problems. People don't know this is happening, and just sharing all sorts of things. So then majority voices can start doing something. And it doesn't take that much time to make a comment or to read an article or to listen to a podcast. And so if you want to send your teachers and the adults that to Asian Allies, I'm doing that. And then I have an Empowered Asian group if you would like to join that as well. And we're talking about the safe space, as well as what do we do here and how are you feeling? So those are a couple of things that I am working on. Any last words moving forward? I know. Asian Pacific Heritage Month. I know that Brooke, you founded the Asian club at your school. I hope you can share out what you're doing for that, so other schools can maybe have that as a starting point. And maybe you could talk to Mr. Brown and see, hey, can we disperse this and give these to other schools to give them an idea?
Yeah, so thus far we've had 2 meetings, and I think they've been successful given the circumstances. Obviously, it's COVID, and at our school, at my high school, we have them during a period of advisory, and that's like baked into our schedule. I know the other 2 high schools in the district don't have this period, so it is a little bit more difficult. You'd have to meet like after school, but I think that the goal of our club, our mission statement, is really just community, really just trust, and making sure that everyone feels as if they can feel comfortable speaking about their experiences. And I know that over the summer, Mr. Brown's advice was plans so we don't have a reviving club like in the fall. And so my hope is that we can, the leaders and myself can meet over the summer and plan for like community building activities and bake in their collaborations. Like our last meeting was a collaboration with the Black Student Union at my school, and I'm the vice president. I'm going to be the president next year of that as well. And so, also having a little bit of intersectionality in there. I'm like, hey, like we're allies. How can we be more allied towards each other, and like making sure that everything is moving in the right direction. I talked with Madison recently about hopefully starting stuff at her school, and hopefully we can do stuff at the middle schools and even go to like the elementary school level. I know that there was a book reading with Black Student Union recently, within the past couple of years of it starting at my high school. So I know that we definitely have the opportunity to reach the little ones and make sure that as I have younger siblings, make sure they feel comfortable and brave enough to speak up.
I'm so inspired. Just like, thank you. Well, and so does anybody want to say anything else? I'm speechless. I'm thrilled. No, you all need to say something else, because now you're empowered. Say something that you were excited for, because now you have this newfound power. I know you're going to change the world. So let's share something that you are excited about. Go ahead, Belle.
I think just getting comfortable with speaking out is something that I'm super proud to see like both me and other people doing. And it's just so powerful because like all these girls, like I am not like super close to them. Like none of us were super close friends, but even just after talking today, like I feel like I know them so much better. Like we've had the same struggles. Like I literally feel like we've known each other longer than just this discussion. So I think that speaking up is such like a very exciting thing for me.
Madison?
I just really think that, we need to be having these experiences more often. Like, we need more people to be talking about this. And like, younger kids even too, because I know middle school was really hard, with, being a different race. And I just really like hope to, and like Belle said, like we've all agreed on, inspire the younger generations. I mean, we haven't seen a change yet. You guys were talking about your math teacher that's experienced the same stuff we have. I really hope that we can start seeing change in this, and not just change, but empowerment. Like, let's empower, the oppressed.
Go ahead, Sanvi.
I'm excited because I feel like after this year and after the listening session, I've realized that being Asian isn't just like another thing in the list of like why the world will hate me or why I should be ashamed of myself. It's something on the list of what makes me who I am and what makes me beautiful. And that's made me like start talking to people more about it. If someone's racist, I'm going to tell them about it now. And I don't feel like I have to be polite and, let people stomp all over me anymore.
Go ahead, Maria.
I'm just really excited, like as Belle said, for like the community that we can build, because I feel like definitely after the listening session, like just talking with my friends afterwards, we were like, we're on this like just high of like happiness like the rest of the day and the day after. And I feel like definitely, as like Belle was saying, like I kind of just feel like I know people better like after just saying all these shared experiences. So if I can reach out to the younger students, especially like even within our district, like at least we can just build like a stronger relationship and like a family that's more tight knit.
Yes, I love it. And when you set up these Zoom calls, I want to if you can report back to me, and we'll share how it went and how great it is. And just FYI for your future here, I'm a speaker and a professional speaker, and I was very active in the National Speakers Association. And for the state of Washington, I was president for 3 years, and then it was definitely a white organization. And let's see, there was 7, I think it was out of 2000, there were 7 Asians. So um, so you're needed, and you are all so smart and powerful, and all your storytelling is very different, and it is so persuasive and authentic, and I love it, and I'm happy to be a resource to you. And feel free to connect with me. I'm so proud of you all. And thank you, Brooke. And do tell the other people we can continue to do these panels. With the more voices, the better. If we can get some guys in here, that would be wild, wouldn't it? So